Hey there, guys. So I want to thank you for taking the time to check out today's live stream. So, of course, what we're going to be talking about is over understanding your why beyond appearance. So, let me get this pulled up. Hopefully, things will go smoothly today. It seems like everything is working a little bit better this time around than it was last week. So I made sure to keep everything, in check before I did start today. So, before we do get started, guys, I do want to share again, if you're interested in learning about all that I have to offer, I do have a QR code on screen that takes you to, of course, my top form, which you can sign up to learn more about online fitness coaching. So, if that's something that you're interested in, you can scan that. Or also, you can go to bponlinefitness.com and learn a little bit more about what I have to offer related to online fitness coaching. Now, like what I've mentioned previously in the past few streams that I've done, this is my third stream doing, streams here on YouTube here recently. And again, if this is your first time sort of watching these streams are a little bit different than some of the ones that I do on sort of my Facebook and TikTok. With this stream, I try to go more over approaching fitness in a way for, anybody who is LGBTQ, and especially, of course, geared towards men who are 30 plus and who are, really trying to build a workout routine again and really trying to, again, be more comfortable in an environment, such as going to the gym again. And that's been my main focus with these streams here recently, is to really dive into changing our perspective with how we see fitness and how we see the gym itself. And like I've said before, that's why I tell a little bit more of my story so that you know that, what I'm talking about is not something that I'm just trying to say, but it is an experience that I've went through myself when it comes to struggling being in an environment, like the gym and not feeling like you belong in that environment. And that's the reason why I've sort of made this the focus. So this live stream is actually kind of an extension of what I discussed yesterday. So if you didn't watch my Facebook Live, which I just posted on my channel just yesterday, is that I discussed a little bit about consistency and not making your workout routine focus solely on motivation. And that's basically sort of sums up a little bit about what I talked about yesterday. Now, this is kind of connected to that in a sense because we're still sort of talking about the concept of, changing our perspective. And that's kind of what I discussed yesterday. And the reason why I'm going over these points is I think this is the major thing that a lot of people can get really caught up on when it comes to sticking to a structure, in a fitness routine. So I encourage you, if you're watching any of these streams or if you have been watching them, I would definitely take notes from these different topics and points that I go over because this is all free information that, I'm sharing with you guys. And this is, again, I want to share, my expertise as an online fitness coach. And again, that's the reason why I do these, to make fitness more approachable, to make, speaking to, a personal trainer or fitness coach more approachable. And that's why I discuss these things so that you understand, that's that when you get a grasp over all of these different elements, you can accomplish your goals. It's just again about balancing all of those different, elements to make that happen. So let's go ahead and get started again, guys, with understanding your why beyond appearance. Now, you may be asking why I have, why in quotes on that title. And so this is something that if you've ever, looked up, any kind of like if you've looked up any people that focus on like, because a lot of times I follow a lot of different Substack people and just a lot of more motivational type of accounts. And a lot of times you'll hear the term, understanding your why. And this is basically to summarize what your why is sort of your main factor as to why you're wanting to accomplish your goal, in itself. That why could be various different things. And again, before I do go into this, going over these points, I wanted to share this so that you're kind of understanding the reason why I have, why, what that means when it relates to the title. So, what we're trying to do is create or sort of understand our why into the reasoning on pursuing after a fitness goal or pursuing after, it can be any type of goal actually. It doesn't have to be fitness, but when you have a why behind what you're doing, it sort of becomes that, sort of that guiding sort of that guidepost on getting to that outcome, if that makes sense. So and this is why a lot of times when I talk to any clients, that setting up goals is the first thing you should think about. And so when you have proper goals set up and when you have a clear understanding of why you're trying to accomplish or what you're trying to go after, it makes it easier to accomplish that goal. So, I don't, excuse me, I don't want to go too deep into that, but that's why I'm trying to sort of clarify why that title is the way it is. So our why is basically the reasoning on why we're, accomplishing something. It is that motivational or sort of that guiding factor to get us there, basically. So these are some of the topics that we're going to be going over in this stream. So we're going to be going over moving from validation to self-respect, rewriting the story you learned about your body, fitness as identity and not just aesthetic, healing your relationship with the gym, strength as a form of personal power, the difference between external pressure versus internal drive, longevity and training for the life you want at 40, 50, and beyond, and emotional fitness using training as an outlet. So I want you to take into consideration a lot of these points, and I think you guys will get a lot from this particular stream because we're going to be going over a lot of different topics related to really challenging our mindset when we approach fitness. So moving from validation to self-respect. So again, when we're talking about all these points, the main thing you need to keep in mind is that you're sort of shifting your perspective and how you approach these different points. So this shift changes everything. So validation says I need others to approve of how I look, and self-respect says I take care of myself because I matter. So this is sort of again that mindset shift that I've been mentioning when I've, talked about fitness in itself and how we approach it. So don't see fitness as just a way to please the appearance for others, to just try to create a pleasing appearance for others. Do it for yourself alone. You don't need to have that approval from others. All you need is that approval of yourself. So again, self-respect is all about thinking about taking care of myself because I matter, because you are focusing on building a healthier lifestyle. So, why validation isn't sustainable? So, again, you don't need to seek validation for others. So, this is tied to comparison and outside opinions. So, what this does is when you focus on trying to get validation from others, this can lead to burnout, inconsistency, and self doubt. And progress is going to feel empty if it's only for approval. If you're only doing it for, other people or other individuals, it's not going to be able to stick as well as when you're doing it for yourself. That's another thing you have to think about. And that's one thing that I've sort of noticed myself, my own routine is that when I shifted the focus from trying to please others, you know, in, instead of trying to focus on, getting their validation, when I shifted it from, okay, I'm doing this for my own, well-being and not just to look good for everybody else. It makes a difference in how you approach it because fitness again is so much more than just getting that, physical approval from everybody else. So the next point, of course, is rewriting the story you learned about your body. So the old story is what many were taught is that my body is only valuable if it looks a certain way. And then you have these other thoughts that may run through your mind saying, I need to fix or shrink myself to be accepted. Fitness is about punishment and not support. So you kind of need to shift your perspective here. So understanding your why beyond your appearance. So don't just focus, even though that may be one of your main goals is to improve your appearance, think about some of the other ways that building a fitness routine is going to help you beyond that aspect. So, from appearance to function. So, train to feel stronger, move better, and to live fully. Like I've mentioned, there are so many extra benefits that you will notice when you build a, fitness routine and you stay consistent with that routine. And that's something that I noticed myself with, where I'm at in my own journey is that I've noticed, when you've built these habits, when you start with one healthy habit, starting a routine, and you build that routine, it starts to make you think about how can I improve this habit or how can I add, some of these other better habits in my routine, to really improve my overall life. So it becomes more than the appearance alone. It becomes about all the other things that you can improve. Eating better, making sure that you move more throughout the day. Think about it beyond, again, that appearance aspect. So, from criticism to respect. So, your body isn't a problem to fix, it's something that you're taking care of. That's why I always think about, the term becoming the best version of yourself is something I always think about. And that's how you have to think about it. You don't have a problem with how you look. It's all about taking care of your overall well-being. And like I said, when you do this, it's going to help in your longevity as you age, as we get older. And that's something that I thought about, and I know I'm kind of ahead of thinking about something like that, but whenever I was like around, because I'm 30 now, and when I was around like 26, 27, I was already thinking about, okay, I probably need to start changing some of my habits and improving some of these things. And, yes, I wanted my appearance to be good, or I wanted to improve my physique and appearance, but wanted to focus on not only doing it for that aspect, but also as I get older. And so, again, you have to think about it in that way too, because we do kind of get hung up on just thinking about it in a specific way that we don't think about a lot of the, overall healthy, aspects of creating a fitness routine. So, fitness as an identity and not as an aesthetic. So, when it comes to fitness, it should not be something that you see as this afterthought. It should be something that, again, should be integrated into your lifestyle. It should be a part of your life in a healthy way. It shouldn't be something that you obsess over, of course, but it should be, again, a part of your daily routine. So the old approach, aesthetic driven, and what we mean by aesthetic is again, the physical appearance, the look, how you look. Like when you see guys on Instagram that show off, I've seen this time and time again. And like I said, that's why I approach fitness in a unique way and why a lot of what I share is more focused on information and value rather than just my appearance because I that's the way that I approach fitness. And I think that is more approachable to people when you have somebody that is really discussing rather than just showing off. And I'm not downplaying somebody who has put a lot of effort and work into their routine or, has really reached that point to where they're comfortable with themselves. But I think it becomes really hard for somebody who's new. And like I said, with anybody who's LGBTQ, because of, not feeling comfortable with somebody who, you know, carries themselves a certain way, it becomes hard to, confide in somebody like that. So, again, that's why I think it's important to share information and values so people can understand how did you get there? What was the process you did to get there rather than just showing off, how I look. Now, there's some times where I do show off how I look, but that's not my main focus with what I share. The main focus is the information, and I think that's the most important. Again, why? I think that's what people want to hear the most. So the old approach is aesthetic driven. So this is I'll feel confident when I look better, chasing weight scale or appearance, motivation comes and goes, progress feels fragile and inconsistent. So when you think of this approach where you're just telling yourself that I'll feel confident when I look better, that's not the way you should see it. You should see it as a way you should focus on thinking about the progress you've already made and what the habits that you already have built. So the new approach you need to think about is identity driven. Again, treating fitness as more of a part of your daily life. So I'm someone who takes care of my body. I'm building these habits. Now, even if you're just starting, the fact that you're taking the chance, you're focusing on building these habits, you're focusing on discipline and self-respect. These are, you know, ways that you can change your perspective and how you approach fitness. You don't have to beat yourself up on trying to say that if I get to this point, because let me just say, when you like, I can tell you that I'm never satisfied with how I look. That's just, I'm very critical on myself in a lot of ways, but I will say that when you tell yourself I'll feel confident when I get to this point, that's usually never going to happen because you're always going to move the goalposts. Because when you get into, trying to better yourself, you're always seeing these little things that you can improve. So you need to shift your perspective and not focusing solely on trying to look this exact appearance, but focus on the overall benefits that you're getting from fitness itself. So again, consistency becomes automatic when you change your approach this way and we focus on more identity driven focus. This makes your consistency become automatic. Your confidence is built through action and on appearance. So you're focusing more on the process rather than, solely on the outcome itself. And this is something I've discussed too, is learning how to enjoy your time in the process rather than trying to eagerly, get to the outcome. When you take your time in the process, it makes it so much easier. You're focusing on the here and now rather than, spending your time in the present rather than thinking and going as fast as you can to the future. Focus on what you're doing now. And that's basically what this means is living in the moment, seeing fitness as again validating yourself that you're taking this chance on yourself, that you're building these healthy habits, that you're being disciplined. Again, that's how you have to approach it. So, healing your relationship with the gym. So, like I've discussed, and I'm not going to go into my whole story with the gym because I've touched on it quite a bit already. But like I've said, I've had a, on and off sort of relationship with the gym whenever I first got started. Now, I'm so used to the gym, like it's a second nature thing, but it is easy to heal that relationship with the gym again when you shift your perspective and how you approach it. So, what a broken relationship looks like is that I have to work off what I ate. So, this is, if you're thinking of seeing the gym as this obstacle, this is what this means. You're seeing it as an obstacle, that you're thinking of all these things that have to be changed, that you have to do all of these things and to get to the point. And so again, this is focusing so much on wanting that outcome instantly, but it's not going to happen that way. So, all or nothing mindset, again, you don't need to have that. It does not have to be perfect. Your routine doesn't have to be perfect when you start out. So, if you constantly guilt, shame, or pressure, around your workouts, it's going to be hard to stick to something like that. And when you're comparing yourself to everyone else, like I've discussed in previous streams, everybody is going to be at a different chapter in their journey. They're at a different page. So you can't, completely, equate your journey to somebody else's journey. It's your own journey. So again, shift your perspective from seeing things, when it comes to the gym as this all or nothing, doing everything perfect, trying to shame yourself just because you didn't do anything, maybe one thing correctly in the gym or a few things incorrectly in the gym. That's okay. The fact that you're there and you're trying and you're building the habit, that's what's going to matter the most. So, what a healthy relationship looks like is that I train to feel stronger and not smaller. You're showing up even when it's not perfect. And I sort of discussed this, yesterday, is that again, it's the fact of showing up that matters the most. It's not the fact of getting everything perfect. And I think, again, with the fitness sphere and the fitness, I guess you would say the fitness community in itself, there is, this misconception that people have when they get started. They feel they have to do everything perfectly. Like everything has to be done completely perfect. And when you think of it in that context all the time, it makes it impossible to try to achieve something. If you think of it like everything has to be perfect, it does not have to be perfect. And that's what I say to anybody who starts, coaching with me is that when you build habits, it's not something, it doesn't automatically happen on day one. This is something that takes time to adjust to. Even if you're doing a routine in your own time and you're figuring things out in your own time, it's still something that does take time to get to the point where you're understanding the process more. You have to take it step by step. So use the gym as a tool and not punishment. Focus on your progress and not others. Focus on your own personal progress, how far you've come. A lot of times we do get caught up in thinking so much on the sort of, I guess you would say, the more macro level where we're so focused on, I could have improved here, I could have improved this, could have improved that, in our routine. But we don't think about the overall grand picture on how we've got to this point. If you were able to, lift a little bit more, this month than you could next month, that's something that you need to think about as progress. Think about all the little things and the little habits that you've improved since you've started, whether they be big or small. So focus solely on your own progress. Don't try to compare what you're doing to others. And you can use the gym as a tool. It's a tool to get you to the outcome you're looking for. It's a tool that's going to help you get healthier, feel better about yourself, feel more confident, build strength, build muscle. It is a tool. Don't see it as something that's this, that this is this barrier. It's a way, it's going to be a good tool to help you get to where you want to be. So the next point I want to go over is the difference between external pressure versus internal drive. So external pressure is your short-term fuel. So again, this is going back to the concept of appearance. So I need to look a certain way. So a lot of times, and like I've said, I've seen this many times with social media, like Instagram, it is very common where you can get into the mindset of comparing your journey to others and expecting that you're supposed to be at a certain point, where you're at in your journey. So you're going to have that fear of judgment or not fitting in. The motivation feels urgent, but fades quickly. So don't rely on that short-term pressure. Don't make that your focus. Focus on the internal drive that you have, the long-term power. And again, when something is long-term, It's often more sustainable than something that we're focusing on just a quick emotional sort of movement. So think about, I want to feel stronger and more in control. So self respect, growth, and personal standards. That's what you need to think about. Show up because it aligns with who you are, and motivation becomes consistent and sustainable. So, again, this goes from shifting from that external sort of pressure and switching it to a more internal drive to keep you going and to keep you focused. So that's how you have to think about it. Another thing, like I've mentioned, is that when we approach, fitness and weightlifting and strength training in itself, is that it does help with longevity. And we don't think about that as often. So, training for the life you want at 40, 50, and beyond. So, the short term mindset, again, is training only for appearance, ignoring recovery, mobility, and joint health. We don't often think about these things when we're focused on appearance. Chasing intensity without sustainability. So, thinking about, I'll deal with that later. So it's important to still think about your routine, even if you're focused on, more appearance-based goals, to think about it in the context of longevity, focusing on being able to move better, being able to, recover better from workouts. Again, the longevity mindset is focusing on training for strength, mobility, and function. So not just trying to lift the heaviest weights. You're prioritizing your joint health and movement quality. Again, the way that you can do this is through various different means, such as, stretching, dynamic stretching, foam rolling. There's different ways that you can help, with your mobility while you're including those methods alongside strength training. So think about that as well. And balancing your effort with recovery, and again, building habits that last decades. So you want to focus on who you will be down the road and who will be later. Yes, you do want to focus on the here and now, but you do want to think about, overall what you're going after. Again, that's going back to that why. Why is this something that you're trying to accomplish, beyond just the appearance? Why is this something that, that is very important to you to achieve? So again, think about in the aspect of your overall longevity and aging, and think about, the benefits that you're going to get from that when you start to, emphasize fitness more in your overall life. So this is another great point, and this is pretty much the last point that I'm going to be going over in this particular discussion. So this is one that I really, see really rely on a lot. The way that I approach, the gym and fitness itself. And this is something that can be hard for a lot of us. Again, like I said, if the environment, the gym environment has been very difficult for you in the past, like I said, I can understand that. And I can understand how it can be difficult to use, the gym and exercise as an outlet. And it is hard. It takes a little bit of time to get to that point to where it becomes an outlet. But again, when you're focusing less on everybody, around you and trying to, impress others, and you're focusing more on yourself, it becomes so much easier to stick to that. So, emotional fitness and using training as an outlet. So, the misunderstanding is that using workouts to burn off stress or frustration, treating training like punishment for a bad day, or ignoring emotions instead of addressing them. So, a healthy approach when it comes to fitness is that you're training as a way to channel energy and not suppress it. You're using movement to clear your mind and reset. You're creating space to think, breathe, and process, and letting workouts support your mental state. One of the benefits that I think come with when you approach fitness as more of this way to, relax, is that it does become, like I've mentioned in previous stream, it does become this extra space that you can go to where you feel like you can just be yourself, you can relax, you can reset. And I think that's a good way to see it. It's a time to where you can be yourself, you can listen to music, you can you know, be able to just, sort of be in a clear mindset, focus on what you need to do there. And again, see it as a way to relax. I know it can be hard, starting out, but again, see it as a time for you to, like a me time where you can be to yourself. So again, approach it as a way where you can clear your mind, where you can sort of reset and create a space where you can think, where you can breathe, where you can just be in sort of just a calm and, calmer mindset, in other words. And again, just let your workouts be that support for giving you a better mental state. A lot of times, some of the best workouts can be the ones where, like I've said before, the ones where you don't go to, where you're just not feeling it, where you're just not all there. Sometimes those can be the best workouts that you can go into because it does make you feel better afterwards. That's one thing that I would always tell myself is how much better I'm going to feel afterwards after I finish my workout. So again, change your perspective there. Don't, treat it as a punishment, but treat it as somewhat of a reward, a way for you to, be to yourself, to be in your own space, and to not have to worry about any other obligations, in other words. Alrighty, guys. So that's pretty much all I have for you guys today. Again, this QR code on screen will take you to my top form where you can sign up for online fitness coaching. If you haven't checked out my website, again, it's bponlinefitness.com. Like I've mentioned, guys, every Thursday at 12 p.m. Central Standard Time, I've been doing these streams here on YouTube. I'm also doing other streams. So if you're not aware, on TikTok, I do a stream on Tuesday. I actually didn't do one this week because this week was a little crazy. So next Tuesday, I'll be doing a TikTok stream at 12 p.m. Central Standard Time, Tuesday. And then on Wednesday, every Wednesday on Facebook, in my Facebook group, I do a live stream there as well at the same time. So definitely check that out on Wednesday at 12 p.m. Central Standard Time. But again, guys, I really appreciate your time. I really hope that you found this a little bit insightful and helpful and that it gave you a little bit of a, different approach on how to think about the gym and how to think about exercise beyond just focusing solely on appearance. And especially when we're, like with gay men, we do get caught up with appearance a lot of times. And we get caught up with how we look, but we don't think, about the benefits that come beyond that. It's so much more than that. Like I said, one of the things that I didn't really notice with fitness, when I really got serious and when I shifted my focus so much on appearances, that I started to notice how much different my energy felt, like how much energy I felt overall, how much I was able to, just be able to get through the day, do tasks in a more efficient manner. Like there's so many different benefits that come with, when you take care of yourself more, when you move more, when you think about your nutrition, the quality of what you eat, sleeping more, having better, recovery routines, staying hydrated. All of these different habits have so many great benefits that you'll be able to see, internally rather than just thinking about how you're going to feel physically or how you're going to look physically, I should say. So thank you guys once again for watching. I hope you found this helpful and valuable. Again, guys, definitely check out all the other videos I upload. I try to always, share a ton of great information with you guys each and every day. If you have questions on anything I discuss, feel free to reach out and let me know. I'm always willing to answer any questions that you guys have. But with all that being said, guys, I really appreciate your time, and I will see you guys next Thursday at 12 p.m. Central Standard Time in the next live stream. So thank you guys once again for watching.